Hello everyone and welcome to our Understanding Carer Counselling webinar hosted by Carer Gateway Holstep Health. So I did want to start this session today by acknowledging the Wurundjeri people, the traditional and rightful owners of the lands and waterways on which this presentation is happening. And I pay my respects to the Wurundjeri elders past and present and extend this respect to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples from other communities who might be joining us today. I also want to acknowledge their enduring connection to country and that sovereignty was never ceded. I also want to acknowledge and recognise the important role that carers make to our community and the unique knowledge that they hold. We know that we can only provide quality care through valuing, respecting and drawing upon the lived experience and expertise of consumers, families and carers. So, my name is Terri and I'm an engagement advisor for Holstep Health who look after the Carer Gateway program in Victoria. I'm joined by my colleague Carmen today who's going to be monitoring the Q&A and also my colleague Cass who's going to be diving deeper into our Carer Counselling service. So we know that many of you might not actually be familiar with the Carer Gateway program, so I'm going to provide a quick overview before I hand over to Cass. So carers, they're the family members and the friends of someone with a disability, a mental health condition, a chronic illness, or who might be frail due to age. And in Victoria, there's actually almost 800,000 carers. So that's about 1 in 9 people. And the Carer Gateway program is designed specifically to support them. So in terms of eligibility, as I mentioned, you need to be in a caring role and looking after someone with a disability, mental health condition, chronic illness, or who is frail due to age. And that needs to be ongoing or likely to be for 6 months or more. Now that 6-month cutoff isn't an exact date, but it is used to differentiate between, for example, someone caring for their partner who's broken their leg, but is expected to make a full recovery versus someone who's going to be in an ongoing caring role. Now, importantly, palliative care and recently bereaved carers are the exception to this. So what's not required? There's no citizenship, residence or visa requirements. It's not means tested. It's not affected by other government supports, including the care allowance or the carer payment. So we are focusing on our counselling service today. However, just a really high level overview of the other services that we do have available. So we offer tailored support packages. We also offer a coaching service. We have peer support groups for carers.
But I've got it in front of me anyway.
We also offer planned and emergency respite, and we also have online skills courses as well. And lastly, for this sort of high-level overview is the process. So we will provide some information about how you can register at the end of this session, but the first step is to get in touch and register. Then once you're registered, you're put in touch with your local provider, depending on where you live in Victoria, and you get to have a bit more of an in-depth conversation with them about how things are going for you, and they'll provide some options for services and supports that might be beneficial to you. The next step is to access supports and services. And then finally, the last step is that you will have a check-in with someone to actually make sure that those supports and services have been helpful to you. All right, so now that you've kind of got an overview of the service, I'm going to hand over to Cass, the coaching and counselling team leader at Holstep Health, to dive deeper into our carer counselling service. So thanks, Cass, over to you.
Great, thank you very much, Terri. Okay, hi everybody, and thank you all, and especially all to you unpaid carers for being here today. In this session, we'll be exploring carer counselling and what that involves, the benefits and what it offers, and what you can expect from the whole process as well. So we'll move on to the next slide. Okay, now you may have heard the phrase, we might all be in the same storm, but we're not all in the same boat. So today isn't about coping better or being more resilient. It's about recognising the reality of caring and understanding what support can look like for you. So when I think about unpaid carers, the metaphor really rings true, especially with the storm and the boats. Now, we might all be in the same storm, but we're not all in the same boat. So in this visual that you're seeing on the screen now, you will see that there's quite a storm. The waves are pretty chaotic, and there are many different boats in that storm. So you'll see that there is a small little boat, little dinghy. There's a lifeboat, there's a yacht, and you'll see there's a submarine in there as well, a boat with holes and a boat with a crew. So the storm actually represents the caring responsibilities. Okay, the appointments, the worry, the frustration. It could even be exhaustion and financial pressures, and especially navigating different services. And the boat refers to your emotional capacity as a carer, your health, what is your support network like, the finances, personality, your history, and perhaps your culture as well. So some boats are quite small, as you can see. Some are already maybe perhaps carrying too much, maybe they're not carrying much at all. Some have hidden cracks, and some have a whole team or a crew, and some are steering alone or by themselves, or especially at night time. So I'd just like everybody to just take a moment just to pause and look at the images and just ask yourself, what describes your storm right now? And which boat feels closest to yours right now as well? And if you don't mind, and if you would like, you can also maybe just, or if you're happy to share, type in the chat, which boat feels like you right now. Now, it could be the small dinghy. As I said, it might be the lifeboat. It could be the yacht. Might be the submarine. I know myself, I'm probably feeling like a yacht right now. I'm sailing along, doing okay. And don't have any nerves either, that's amazing. Okay, so we'll move on. So the storm basically is the reality of caring, and I'm going to be coming back to this metaphor a bit throughout the presentation so everyone can gain a really clear understanding about counselling and how it can help carers. So as I said, the storm's a reality of caring. It's the appointments, it's the constant thinking ahead, the responsibility that doesn't switch off. It's about the financial pressures. It can be about navigating systems, as I mentioned, worries, lots of those, particularly in the middle of the night, exhaustion that often will sit in your body, whether it's your chest or your whole body. That's what's representing the storm. So if you're here today, it's likely you know what that storm is like. You probably know it very well. But with the boat, that's a different thing. So the boat actually represents you as a carer, and it's about, in this boat, your physical health, your emotional reserves, your past experiences, your support network, or could be lack of a support network, your finances, as I said, your personality, your culture, and perhaps other responsibilities. You may be working as well, trying to hold down a full-time job and caring. So as we can see, some boats are quite sturdy and some are carrying a lot of the load. Maybe they've been carrying that weight for many years. Some may have already been cracked before the storm hit, and some might be steering entirely alone, or they might actually have a network of people to help them. So here's the important part. Different boats don't mean stronger or weaker. It doesn't mean coping or not coping. It simply means different starting points and different levels of strain. So, for example, two carers can be facing very similar situations. They might have the same diagnosis that they're caring for, the same system delays, the same sleepless nights, and actually experience it very differently. So, as I said, it's not because one is failing, it's because their boats are different. As I said, some are overloaded, some are quietly taking on the water, and some boats are still afloat, where some might actually be starting to sink. And often unpaid carers, they become very skilled at appearing strong or in control, and they learn, I guess, to keep their boat upright, learn to keep it moving, learn to protect the person you care for, no matter how rough it feels. And all the more inside, it can be really relentless. And I mean inside, internally. So if at any point you've thought, why am I finding this so hard, this caring role? Often people seem to be coping better than me. I should be stronger than this. And then I'd like to gently suggest that it might not be about strength at all. It might simply be that your boat has been navigating a long, exhausting storm without any repair, any rest, or any support of a crew. So that's the boat analogy and storm. We'll move on to the next slide. And we'll take you through now our counselling process and explain that in detail. So caring for a loved one is an important task, but it can be stressful at times. So everyone deals with their caring role in different ways. Move to the next slide, please. As a carer, it's not unusual to feel overwhelmed. As I mentioned, at times there can be a lot to remember. There's appointments to organise. There could be medication to administer. There's also the physical strain it can put on you as a carer, sometimes with very little opportunity to rest. And as I said, if you're an unpaid carer, there's also possibly financial worries to consider. It's not surprising that at some point you actually might need to ask for some help. And we'll move to the next slide, please. Okay, what is Carer Counselling? Well, it is a counselling service for carers, and it's a confidential support service that provides carers with a safe space to talk about the emotional and practical challenges of their caring role. It supports carers to manage stress, build coping strategies, maintain their well-being while caring for somebody else. Counselling provides carers with a safe, non-judgmental space to talk through their experiences. It helps them gain perspective and perhaps insight into the issue, as well as build resilience while recognising the unique pressures that come with caring. Now, our qualified carer counsellors will listen and they'll help you work through your concerns and support practical steps forward. And I should say that all our counsellors, they're actually highly experienced and accredited with professional bodies such as the Australian Counselling Association, the Psychotherapy and Counselling Federation of Australia, and each counsellor would have a minimum of 3 years experience in the field, and some also bring in valuable lived experience as carers. And counselling, it's usually a very safe, confidential space to talk. It's emotion focused and it's relational, as well as person-centred on your lived experience. So you basically steer the way in the whole entire therapeutic relationship with the counsellor. So for carers, it also can help with burnout and exhaustion. The other thing is guilt. That's a big thing that we hear with carers, resentment or possibly anger. And I just want to mention anticipatory grief. And what that is, it's a grief you experience before an actual loss occurs. Usually when someone that you care for is facing a serious illness or disability or a decline in their health or mental health. So unlike traditional grief, which happens after the death of a major loss, anticipatory grief happens while the person's still alive. So unlike traditional grief, which happens after death or a major loss, it's also a really tough time through the grief process. And it's common for carers as well and members of families and even close friends. And it can include a mix of emotional, cognitive and physical responses as well. And I'll just mention just a few of those key things. If people aren't sure, it's about sadness and that whole sense of loss in the future, anxiety or worry, guilt, feeling frustrated or impatient. It can bring up anger, irritability, and difficulty in concentrating. Anticipatory grief also allows people to actually process emotions as well. It's a positive in the way you can make some plans and perhaps find ways to cope before the loss occurs. All right, and in this slide here with the benefits of counselling, you will see that it does those wonderful things of also having with fatigue, anxiety, relationship, family challenges, things like that. So one of the first ways counselling helps is really by creating a safe space Carers often say that they don't have anywhere to speak freely or anyone to talk to. Often they're protecting the person that they care from and trying to protect them from any fears, perhaps protecting family members as well from anger, from their anger I'm talking about, and from the full weight of what's really happening in the caring role. And in counselling, you don't have to protect anybody. You can say to the counsellor, I'm exhausted. You're allowed to say, I feel resentful at times, or I'm scared of what's coming up. You can say things that feel unacceptable out loud, because that alone can relieve pressure inside your boat, coming back to that analogy. And counselling can also help you understand what's really happening emotionally as well, because I guess caring brings up a lot of emotions, which is the guilt, grief, anger, sadness, and sometimes even shame for not coping the way you would like to, or maybe the way people think you should be doing so. I mean, those feelings don't mean you're failing. As I said, they're just you're a human being, basically, and it's a prolonged storm for a lot of carers. So talking through these emotions with someone trained to listen without judgment can actually stop those feelings from, quietly eroding, and it can help with the structure of your boat. Counselling can also help steer the boat differently. It doesn't in any way blame you, but in a way it just gives you more choice, I suppose you could say. And that might mean learning how to set boundaries without feeling guilty or any overwhelm there. It might mean learning communicating needs more clearly, recognising signs of burnout sooner than later, finding some small ways just to protect your own energy. And sometimes carers say they feel selfish to focus on themselves, but the reality is if your boat collapses, the storm won't stop. And supporting you isn't selfish at all. It's actually protective. And it's also protective for the person you're caring for as well. So we'll move on to the next slide, please. Excuse me, sorry, I'm not used to talking so much. Right, so what does it look like? Oh, sorry, what are the benefits? Well, actually, I've lost my slide, sorry. What does it look like? Okay, so carers can actually access up to 6 free counselling sessions. Each runs for up to an hour. Their sessions are available with either in person or by phone or video. Sometimes carers actually like to see their counsellor, because you do get the same counsellor throughout the whole 6 sessions, and they might like to see their counsellor in person for the first one if they can, and then maybe move to phone or video. And sometimes people just don't have anywhere safe to speak, so they do prefer to come in person, and we do have some good consult rooms and things like that where we can keep it safe and confidential. And sometimes carers are really busy. They'll make an appointment and then realise, I'm not going to make it to the location. However, if you give the counsellor a little bit of notice, they're happy to adapt and be flexible, and they will do a phone session with you or perhaps a video session. And the appointments are all available during our business hours, which are 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. And there's no cost, as I said, it's a free service. So carers, as I said, get to see their counsellor throughout the journey, which is a real positive, not having to repeat the story too many times. And it ensures continuity of care and a consistent therapeutic relationship. They also have ability to access, like I said, the blend of how you want to have your sessions. So you just tell the counsellor and they'll work with you. Many carers, as I said, they do like to come in person, but we do have a lot of people that are just really busy or they're working. So again, it's not a problem to even just have online sessions. It's really saves people a lot of time and energy as well. And if you want to keep your boat strong, I guess, yeah, these things are important to think about. And as I said, the appointments, they're typically, they're always in between the hours of 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. But they are actual booked sessions as well. So you would work with your counsellor to do that, and they'll do their best to work with you in terms of what day might suit you best and time, and keep a consistency. The appointments are typically held weekly or fortnightly, as it's a short-term model, so it just depends on the carer's need and the counsellor's availability as well. I should just mention too that it's counselling. Many carers tell us they really like it because it doesn't feel clinical. It focuses on their emotional support. They are heard and validated of their caring experience. So yeah, there's some positives there. All right, we'll move to the next slide, please. Okay. So as I said, counselling, it isn't about fixing things. It's about supporting carers to keep going and without burning out. So you'll see the images on the screen there, a lady who is obviously got a lot of thoughts. They're all tangled up and feeling overwhelmed, exhausted, and possibly feeling alone there. But after counselling and speaking with a counsellor, as you can see in the image there, the person looks much calmer and probably able to have a good night's sleep because they're feeling better equipped to cope. So another thing we often hear in counselling sessions is identity becomes an issue for carers. They feel they've lost their identity and they're quietly struggling with that a lot of the time. So when you've been caring for someone for a very long time, it can begin to feel like that's your major role in life. Maybe you're not the mum or the wife or the daughter any longer. You are the carer. It seems to be your only role. And counselling, what that can do is also create that safe space to reflect upon these issues and make you realise, you know, who am I? Who is alongside me in this role? And what do I need? And what matters to me as a carer? So that space can feel incredibly stabilising when the storm feels very all-consuming. And before we finish, I'd just like to acknowledge something important, that even if counselling sounds helpful, many carers really hesitate. So you might be thinking, I don't have time. Someone else might need counselling more than I, or it feels indulgent. It won't change anything. Or what if I fall apart when I start talking? I just want to say that all of these are really common thoughts. Time is a real barrier, and when you're caring, your day often isn't all your own. So guilt can be powerful, and many unpaid carers feel that focusing on themselves somehow takes something away from the person that they support. But support for you is not an extra. It's what we call maintenance. And if you imagine your boat one more time, maintenance isn't indulgent. It's absolutely necessary. So some carers worry that counselling means admitting they can't cope. But again, counselling isn't judgment. There's no judgment in this space. The main focus is on you as a person and what issues you want to address and to help you cope better in your role. And if you're worried about opening something up, you do remain in control. So you don't have to share everything with the counsellor all at once. With a short-term model, it is quite impossible to deal with lots and lots of issues. But if it's a presenting issue, or maybe perhaps emotions are very heightened, or there's fear of loss in the future, then yeah, our counsellors will always move at your pace, just so you know. And if anything we've talked about today resonates even slightly, you don't have to make a decision right away to attend counselling. I just want to go to the next slide now, please. And we've just got a quote. It's an example of one of the many positive feedbacks we received from carers after having counselling. Counselling gave me a space just for me. I felt listened to without judgment, and it helped me manage the stress of caring better. I came away with practical strategies and felt less alone in my role. We've kept that carer anonymous, obviously, for confidentiality reasons, but yes, this is common what we hear. All right, I guess we're moving on now. We can move on to Q&A time.
Yeah, we'll get into the Q&A now. So to kick things off, we are going to answer some questions that our team do get asked all of the time. However, in the meantime, please, if you haven't already, put your questions in the chat, and after we've answered the first couple of questions, we'll hand over to them. But Cass, the first question I have is, what happens in the first session?
Yep. Okay. So I know it's one of the biggest worries about counselling is not actually knowing what happens in the first session. So I'll just simplify it. It's pretty much a conversation with the counsellor. And at the start, the counsellor will explain what confidentiality looks like, how the sessions will work, so that way you feel clear and safe. They'll gently ask something like, what's brought you here today? Or what's been feeling most difficult for you? And of course, you don't need to have a perfect answer to that. It's okay to say, I'm just exhausted. I really don't know where to start. So you're not expected, as I said, to tell your whole story in that first session, but whatever you do share, you won't be judged. You're always in control of what you share. And for many carers, simply the first time they've had space sometimes to even talk to anyone, and they realise they don't have to be the strong one. So again, the first session is the aim is not to have you leaving feeling all fixed, because that's not possible. You just need to leave feeling heard. And again, that's another common thing we hear is people feel so heard, or they're just not able to talk or be listened to. Yeah, so I hope that answered the question in the first session.
And you talked about earlier what happens in the first session, but another question we get asked a lot is what happens after 6 sessions?
Yeah. Sure. Well, I guess around after the 6 sessions, many carers start to actually notice changes after they've been talking and they've built a relationship with the carer counsellor. So, and some changes might be really, really tiny and they might be really big, but it's also just for them to see how they're coping with their caring role. And a counsellor will usually spend some time reflecting with a carer in the space on what's been helpful so far. And it might look like strategies that they've learned to manage stress. It might be ways to deal with the guilt or anger, moments where you've been able to rest or protect your own well-being. You'll also check in on your goals with the counsellor at the end of the sessions. And if you do set goals at the beginning, like, for example, reducing anxiety or finding ways to set boundaries or manage overwhelm, the counsellor will ask what's working and what still feels tricky. And sometimes because new priorities do come up as well during the 6 sessions, then you'll also plan, next steps together. Some carers feel ready to pause or finish counselling, knowing they've got the tools to cope on their own. And occasionally a counsellor might suggest an additional or a specialist support if needed. And by this stage, the focus is often on consolidating all the coping tools, as well as reflecting on what maybe they've learned and thinking about in order to maintain their well-being going forward. But I guess most importantly, it's about remembering that counselling, and I bring it back to the boats again, isn't about making that storm go away. It's about strengthening your boat and helping you feel more able to navigate all those waves ahead. I hope that's answered that question.
Thank you. And then I guess we've talked a bit about counselling, but what are the benefits of seeing a carer counsellor, I suppose, instead of a general counsellor?
Sure. Yep. Well, there is a difference. The main difference is understanding. Carer counsellors know what the unique pressures of an unpaid carer is like. They understand the exhaustion, the guilt, the stress, and the constant feeling of being on duty. They understand what it's like to live in that storm and how it can affect your health, emotions, and identity. So they can offer practical strategies that fit around your caring role. As I said, things like perhaps boundaries, that's a common one we hear, perhaps managing stress and protecting your own well-being rather than getting general advice that may not suit your situation. The carer counsellors also know about other carer support services as well, so they can link you into groups, respite options, or local resources if you need them. And perhaps most importantly, they actually validate your experience, and you don't have to explain the basics of being a carer. They actually get it, and that empathy and understanding can make it much easier to feel safe and heard and supported in the counselling space. So I hope that's answered your question.
Yeah, thank you. I'll hand over to Carmen now to see if any questions have come through the Q&A, or maybe even just to point out where the Q&A button is.
Hi everyone. We do have one question, but I will remind people that so there is a chat function. So that one's closed off, but next to chat there is a Q&A icon with a little speech bubble and question mark inside. So if you do have any questions, you can head there and drop it in. So Sue has asked, do we need a GP referral?
You don't need one of those.
That's all the questions I've got in here. Unless anybody, I can give everyone a second to put any more in. We've got another one here. So can I invite my partner into a counselling session if they're not registered with Carer Gateway, or should they organise their own counselling session?
Yes, that's a good question. Yes, unfortunately, we can't see carers if they're not registered, and we only offer individual sessions, not family or couples. So, but we can put people in touch with family therapists if that is something they want to explore. But often we find carers need to share their own experiences. So, and to access our service, you do need to be registered. So we'd encourage people to get registered so they can access the service.
Okay, we have another one here. Can a carer come back for more sessions at a later time?
Yes, they can. Often carers' circumstances do change, but again, as long as they're registered, and that's not a problem, there will be an assessment process, etc., and they may have to go back on a wait list, but it's not usually too long a turnaround, and yeah, so they can. And I guess in case anyone's wondering, I get this question a bit, how long do I have to wait? Our wait times, just so people know, are usually possibly up to 6 weeks. It really depends on the demand of our services at the time. So as I said, we offer the online and phone sessions as well to make it easier for carers so they can fit it around their role, and it's a little bit quicker as well in terms of getting going. We also recommend, as I said, registering when things are actually going okay, not just at a crisis point. I think that's really key because it gives time to start building your toolkit and the coping strategies, as well as any support habits or any challenges that arise. So yeah, it's good to do that sooner than later. And I guess at the end of the day, everyone deserves support. So if it is a couple, I would really suggest that they're both carers, they both get registered and both access the services that are available. But the first step, I should remind people, is to just, have a short call to our Carer Gateway intake team or online registration to discuss your needs, and then, yeah, you could look at booking a session with counselling.
Any other questions come through?
No more questions for now, but of course,
Right.
If you guys have any further after the webinar, there's some details here.
Yeah, so if you do have any more questions, please feel free to reach out via email. We've got the CG Carer Engagement at holstephealth.org.au email address. Or if you have any feedback, we do have a carer feedback at holstephealth.org.au email address as well. We will provide all of this information to you after today's session as well, so don't feel like you have to write it down too quickly. I did want to see if you had any finishing notes on this metaphor, Cass, before I get into how to register or refer.
Yeah, I would love to, just quickly. So yeah, we've brought this image back up again because I just want to do just a final word from me, and just so people know that today isn't about judging, just reminding you, it's about what the condition of your boat is like. We're not telling you to sail better, and it's certainly not about pretending that the storm isn't real. And with that in mind, counselling doesn't remove the storm. So if anything we've talked about today resonates even just a little bit, you don't have to make a big decision immediately, okay? And I'd like to leave you with this. The storm may be part of your life right now, but you are more than the storm. And you are more than the role of a carer. And if your boat has been weathering a lot, you deserve support to strengthen that boat, because you're not failing, you're a human. And as I said, counselling doesn't stop the storm, but it doesn't also remove any caring responsibilities, but it can change what happens inside your boat. and that's it. So I wish everyone all the best, and yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Cass. So if you found the session helpful today and you are interested in registering or seeing if the counselling service are right for you, or if you have any other questions, there's a few options. So you can call that 1800 number between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. Monday to Friday. You can also scan the QR code that's on the screen now to request a callback, and basically this will ask you for your name, your phone number and your email address, and it will also ask for a day and a time of the week that suits you for one of our lovely intake workers to actually give you a call back instead. And importantly, we also have a translating and interpreting service available if needed as well. So finally, thank you so much for your time today. I really hope that you have found this session useful and that it's increased your understanding of our counselling service. But as I said, if you've got any more questions or you want to get in touch, please feel free, and we will be sending through the recording and all of the details provided today as well to you. Thanks. Thanks, everyone.